Hello everyone, welcome to iFashi. Today's tutorial will be making this beautiful and very simple top together. Here's the one we made from this tutorial, guys. If this is something you're interested in learning how to make, let's get right into it without wasting much time. But before we begin, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't done that already. And also remember to follow us on other social media platforms at iFashi because we also drop short tutorials there. So here is the pattern paper that we're going to be drafting on. Today we are doing a very simple pattern drafting because this particular top doesn't have any contour or dart whatsoever. So the first thing I did on my pattern paper was to rule out my starting line at the top of my paper, and then from that line I'll come down with my bust point 10 inches, my under bust 13 inches, and my front waistline, which is 17.5. From that front waistline I went down with 4 inches to extend my top. That would be the length of my top. So now I have bust line, under bust, front waistline, and the length of my top. So I'll repeat all of these measurements and then rule out a straight line on them and label these lines so that we'll know what they are for. Now that we have our lines out, I'm going to go to the first line I marked on my paper, which is the shoulder line. I'll take my shoulder measurement divided by 2 on that line, which is 8 inches, and then I'll extend this shoulder measurement by 7 inches because the sleeve of this top is cut together with the top. So I went out with extra 7 inches and came down with 1 inch for my shoulder slope. So we're going to slope this shoulder towards the neck measurement. To get the neck width, I'll divide my bust circumference by 16 and add 1 inch to get my neck width. So after imputing 3.3 there, I came down with 1 inch for the neck depth. Please take note, this is the back that we are drafting first. Now I'll connect my shoulder slope to meet the neck point, and then I'll take my measurements on these lines. On my bust line, I'll take my bust measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch for ease because this top is not tight. And then on the waistline, I'll take my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch for ease. On the full length line, I'll take my hip circumference divided by 4 and mark it there. And then we'll come back to this shoulder extension to mark out the depth of our sleeves. Now for these sleeves, I'm going to come down with 10 inches, and this 10 inches exceeds my bust line, right? So some people maintain their bust line, depends on how deep you want it. For the picture we're working with, this sleeve came down. So I'm coming down with 10 inches from my shoulder slope, and then I'll mark out a straight line there. It is from this straight line we will now make a curve to meet our waist measurement that we just took. This bust measurement we took before is just a guide. We're not going to be working with it in this top, right? So I'll just use my curve ruler now to make a curve from the end of my sleeve to meet my waist measurement. And from that waist measurement, I'll also make a curve to meet my hip measurement on the top length line. So now that we have this out, on that top length line, I'm going to come up with 1 inch because I don't want the top to have that sharp edge on my waist, right? So I came up with 1 inch and I used my ruler to curve that 1 inch inwards to the top so that to not make that edge too sharp. And that's that for the back. But one more thing I'm going to do, which is optional, is to come inward with 0.5 inch on my waistline for the back. I usually do this for outfits that has zipper to snatch the back of my waist, but this is a free top. This is just a habit I'm used to. I just took it out here regardless. So I'm going to be cutting that part off. But before we cut it off, I'm going to introduce a fresh paper, pattern paper, that we'll use to draft out our front. So I'll place this back piece on top of this new paper and trace out the measurement we have. But before tracing out, the first thing we're going to do is to come inwards from the beginning of our new paper with 3 inches. I'm using 3 inches here because this top is overlapped. One side of the top is overlapping the other side, right? So if you want your overlap to extend more than 3 inches, if you take 4 inches, it means it's going to extend further. So I used 3 inches and then I marked a straight line on that 3 inches. And it is on that straight line I placed my back piece to start from. So I'll use my tracing wheel now to trace out these measurements we have on this back pattern we drafted already. to trace it out on this new paper so that these lines will come out on this new paper. If you don't have a tracing wheel, what you do is to use your marker to mark around this back piece we have here, and then use your ruler to highlight the lines. After tracing out my back piece now, the next thing I'm going to do is to use my ruler to highlight the lines that I just marked with my tracing wheel so that the lines will come out on this front pattern. I'm doing this because we don't want to start taking our measurements from scratch. Now I've just repeated what I did for back on the front pattern, except the beginning of my pattern paper where I came in with 3 inches. Now that we have transferred all our measurements from the back piece to the front piece, I'm just going to go ahead now and speed this up and use my marker to highlight all these lines on this new pattern paper. Now, on that beginning where I came in with 3 inches, I'm going to go down with 4 inches. This is because one of the fronts that is overlapped is extended. So this extension, you're also going to determine how long you want the extension to be. So 4 inches is just fine for me. That's why I came down with 4 inches. Sorry, my pattern paper is torn in this part, so I have to tape it down. And then what I did was to connect from that 4 inches to meet the length of the top that we already have. And that's that for this front extension. We have the 3 inches at the beginning of our paper. We have all the measurements we already took out for the back highlighted on this new paper. So what I'm going to do now is the V-neck we have on this top. You're going to determine how deep you want your V to be. As you can see on the screen, the 2 sides of the front met at the bust point. If you want yours to meet on top of the bust, you're going to stop your V at your chest line. But take note of how I placed my ruler on my pattern paper, starting from the end of my neckline through my bust point. The line past my bust point, which means that's where it will stop. So now I'm just going to go ahead and mark out the V-neck we have on the front pattern and cut off this edge that we will not be needing. Now we have our front pattern and our back pattern. You see how simple this top is to draft? Remember everything we did for this back? The sleeve is cut together with the top. After taking out our shoulder, we came out with 7 inches to extend the sleeve. This 7 inches is not constant. It depends on how long you want your sleeve to drop. So we took all our body measurements and repeated the same thing for the front, and that's how we got to where we are. So I'm just going to go ahead now and cut out this new front pattern that we just drafted. Another thing you need to note, this front pattern we just cut, we're going to need 2 pieces of it, because as you can see on your screen, this 4 inches extension we added is not on the 2 fronts. It's on only one single front. The other one went inside straight, and it is just one that went down with extra 4 inches. So now I've duplicated this pattern paper to have 2. So I'm going to now go ahead and decide which of them will go down with the 4 inches extension and which of them I'm going to leave out straight. This totally depends on you, depends on the side you want to put your button. So after making your decision, you're just going to go ahead and use your curve ruler from the length of the top on the side here. You're just going to curve it inwards. If you measure it, is around 3 inches or 2.5, and you're going to go ahead and cut it off. So when you cut it off, you now have 2 different front pieces. One is extended and one is not. And this part that I'm raising up is the part that is extended. So I mentioned before, if you want yours to extend more, you're going to have to add to the 3 inches that I took at the beginning of my pattern paper. So guys, that's that for the drafting of this beautiful top. Now we're going to go ahead and cut out what we just drafted on fabric. So here is the crepe fabric that I'll be using for this project. It's a very thick, good quality crepe fabric. Oh, and here is my hairstay. I'm going to go ahead now and iron this hairstay to the fabric and place my pattern paper to cut it. After cutting, this is what we have. I have 4 pieces of my back, which is 2 lining and 2 main fabric. And for the front piece, I have 2 pieces of each. This is because the 2 fronts are different. So I have 1 piece of lining here, 1 piece of fabric, and one piece of lining here, one piece of fabric for the front. So what I'm going to do now is to remove my pattern paper and start pinning them down the way we're going to be stitching them on the sewing machine. Before we start pinning, I've also gone ahead to cut out my belt. This piece of fabric here is what we'll be using for the belt. I cut out 20 inches long. By the time I join the edges, I'll have about 18 to 9 or 19 inches long. You can cut the length you want for your belt. So what I just did here is to fold it into two, fold out the wrong side. I'll go ahead and use the 0.5 inch seam allowance I added to stitch this belt before I'll turn it out to the right side. After stitching the belt with the sewing allowance, this is what we have. I'm going to go ahead now and cut out the excess we have after stitching. The reason I'm cutting this out is because we need it to be flat after turning it to the right side and ironing. If you leave excess fabric on the inside when you iron, that place is going to look bulky. So this is what I have after bringing it out to the right side. I'm just going to go ahead now and use my iron to press it down so that our belt will lay very flat. Remember, you can support this channel by subscribing to the channel or becoming a member of the channel for a token. And one perk of being a member is that you can request for tutorial and we put that tutorial up for votes, and then the highest vote gets posted. So this is what we have after ironing the belt. You see how flat it's now looking. After everything, we have 19 inches left of our belt. So I'm going to keep it aside now and continue working on the top. Now, the first thing I'm going to do on this top is to join the back piece. Mind you, if I didn't come in with 0.5 inch on this back piece, the back would have been just one piece. You wouldn't need to join it, right? So because I opened my own with that 0.5, I've gone ahead to join it. I'm just ironing it now so that the joining I made there will be very neat. Now, this is what we have after ironing. So now I'm going to place it right sides facing each other, the back and the front piece, and we'll join the shoulder first. The first thing we're joining is the shoulder. I'm doing this on both the main fabric and on the lining. I'll take it to the sewing machine now. Place them right sides facing each other. Both the lining piece and the main fabric, I'll place them right sides facing each other and stitch on the shoulder using the sewing allowance that I added while cutting. I'll join that shoulder part and I'll be right back to show you what we have. So I've joined the front to the back on the shoulder, and this is what we have. I did this on the main fabric and on the lining. Ignore this belt you're seeing here. I've not added it. I just used pin to secure it. And please remove your belt at this point. This is not the point to attach your belt. I was just checking out something. So I'm going to place my lining now on top of the main fabric and pin it down all around. We're going to have to turn it out first before we attach the belt when we're joining the sides. So I'm starting my pinning from the neckline all around. From the back neck down to the front neck all the way down. The front of the top is open, so I'm pinning the whole thing down. After pinning the front, I'll go ahead and pin the sides, the sleeve, the back, the down part, the hem, every other part I'm going to pin everywhere. And by the time we pin and stitch it all around, we will not have anywhere to turn it out from. Everywhere will be closed, right? So we'll now go ahead and open up some parts of the back on the lining piece. We'll open that part up and bring it out from there. I can just open this small part from the back and turn everything out from there before I stitch it back later. So I'm going to go ahead now and do the stitch all round. But while I'm doing this stitch, I'm going to add a hemming gum, especially to this neckline area. The only part I will not add hemming gum is the sides, because we'll be joining the sides regardless, right? So I'm going to add hemming gum to the neckline, to the sleeves, and to the hem, so that by the time I bring it out to the right side and iron, it will lay very flat. So after stitching it all around, this is what we have. You can see the white thing there is my hemming gum that I added while I was stitching. Like I mentioned before, it's only on the sleeves and the neckline and the hem. It's not on my sides. So I've done all the stitches, as you can see. The next thing now is to give it a notch, especially the neckline. Everywhere that is curved, I'm just going to go ahead and notch it all around because we don't want to bring it out to the right side and start having squeezes anywhere. So I'm just going to go ahead and notch. Anywhere you have bulk fabrics, just go ahead and cut it out and do your notchings on the curves you have. After notching, we're going to go ahead and lose a part of this back. I'm losing the lining part of my back piece. So I'll lose it a bit, around 3 inches. Depends on where you're comfortable bringing everything out from. If 2 inches is enough for you to put your hand inside, that's fine, right? So there's no measurement for that. Just lose some parts and bring it out to the right side from there. So after bringing it out to the right side, you're just going to go ahead and use your hand to make sure everything is out before we go ahead and iron. So when you're ironing, be very careful. Remember, we have hemming gum. Make sure the lining and the main fabric is well placed and you give it a very good press. You see the part we are in this top, we're almost done, guys. It's a very, very simple top. We'll be teaching you this and many more in our 3 months intensive beginners class. Registration is currently on and the link to register for this class will be in the description box. You see why I always say we should iron when you're working. This top is looking very flat after ironing compared to how it was looking before we ironed. So what we're going to do now is to join the two sides together. You don't need to take your body measurement here because this is not a fitted top. So we're just going to bring down the front piece towards the back, right sides facing each other, and then close the two sides. While closing these two sides, remember to attach your belt. So I'm placing my belt on the waist part. As we know, this curved part is where I took my waist measurement, right? You're going to place your belt on that waist part and pin it down. After pinning down the belt, you now bring down the front piece and stitch. I'm going to make this stitch on both sides now, and I'll be right back to show you what we have. So here's what we have. I've stitched the two sides and the belt has been attached. So this is what it is looking like. I'm going to go ahead now and bring it out to the right side and do the final ironing of this top. And that will be that for this top, guys. Remember to like this video, share, and also subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications so that when we drop our weekly tutorials, you'll be notified. Now, I'll go ahead now and iron this top, then attach our buttons. So for the button of this top, I'll be using this press button you're seeing on your screen. It comes in different colors. I have the white and the black. So I'll be using the white for this top. I'll be needing just 2 pieces of this press button. One will be placed on one of the front piece that is inside, and then the other one will be placed on this other front piece that is overlapping the other front piece, right? So after attaching your press button, you can go ahead and use a fancy button or a brooch to beautify this top. So I'll hook this brooch to this outer part of my button and I'll pair it with this tweed skirt that we made in our last tutorial. So here's what we have, guys. Thank you so much for watching to this point. We've come to the end of this tutorial. Remember to like and share this video and also subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in our next tutorial.